Everyone, and welcome to your review for your first exam in Com 350 for the summer session. This exam will cover from the beginning of the semester up until the end of the Roman classical period. So before the medieval period, we will actually have this first exam, and that might sound kind of silly to you to have so much left for the second exam. However, I need to cover more people but less material in that second section, in the second half of the semester, and I really want you to have the basics down about rhetoric before we move on, and that's why exam one is the way that it is. Now, my exams are not about you memorizing some answers or me trying to trick you or anything like that. Here's what my exams are supposed to do. They're supposed to demonstrate to me that you are able to find this information quickly. Well, I won't say quickly, it's not timed, but that you're able to find this information and that you're able to find the right answers. What do I mean by the right answers? I mean the answers that come from your text, that come from our lectures, that come from our board posts or wherever, but not I Googled this answer and this is the correct answer. That is not the way these answers work. Why? Everybody has different interpretations of what these articles and, well, really you're just reading the text, might mean. And so I want to make sure that we stick with the one that we are all learning. So my lectures, the open notes, open book, whatever, this exam will be up for an entire week. So you should feel free to take it during any time during that week. Now, the only thing I do to, quote, limit anything is that I do not allow you to take more than one attempt on the exam. I have a lot of reasons for that, but mainly here's how this works. I put no timer on it. It's up for a week. A lot of times people have set aside an hour to go ahead and do their exam. I'm not even sure that it takes that long, to be honest with you. But some people who want more time, can set aside as much time as they want because you can open the exam. And as long as you do not close that window, as long as you do not close the exam, you can open that exam back up anytime during the week. So, if something tragic happens and you're like, oh, Dr. Dudash, that test got submitted, but it wasn't supposed to. My cat stepped on my keyboard, or my child decided to unplug everything. Those things happen. So just simply send me a text, because that's the fastest way for me to fix it, and I will go in there and fix it for you. But I've never actually had that happen, so I don't know that there would be any reason for it to happen now. I just want you to know that obviously that's a possibility. Life throws some stuff at us sometimes, and we have to hit back. So here's how this exam works. It is all short answer or multiple choice, okay? So you should be able to figure things out. Hopefully, if you've been following along in your book and the lectures, these will be easy for you. That's sort of the goal. Why? Because again, I just want to make sure that you're reading. I want to make sure that you get the right answers. I want to make sure that you know where to find this information that isn't google.com, okay? That's what's important here. So we're looking for academic sources in your papers. So of course we want to use academic sources to study for your exam. So make sure that you do that. And by academic sources at this point for your exam, I mean your textbook and me. For your paper, that's going to look a little differently because I asked for external academic sources, not sort of the internal ones to this course and to me and to you. Like, hey, I had a personal experience today. Here's how I think it involves rhetoric. That's not going to work for me, okay? So I want you to actually do a little, I'm going to say legwork, but it's probably more finger work for you because pretty much everything in our library is also online and made available to you. And all of the classical texts are also made available to you. So I'm hoping that helps out a little bit, and I'm hoping that this test isn't too big of a deal. With it being multiple choice and short answer questions, I'm going to give you a few ideas about what those questions might look like. Obviously, we are going to start with the four ancient Greek school of thought, Plato, Aristotle, Isocrates, and the sophists. We are also going to include Rome, including Cicero and Quintilian, okay? So that's really only 6 theorists that you need to worry about, which is a lot easier to tame than what's going to happen in our second exam. The other thing to keep in mind, though, is that I'm looking for a detailed, in-depth answer. So I'm not looking for the quickest thing that you can put down. That will likely be for the second test, honestly. But for this test, I'm going to be asking you more deep probing questions. For example, here are some short answers that you might find on your exam. List and define the 3 artificial proofs according to Aristotle. Now, when I say list and define, that means list them and also define them. So, ethos, logos, and pathos. I don't want examples. I want definitions. What does Aristotle say that ethos is? Some people say, well, it's character and credibility. And character and credibility are made up of 2 things, which is competence and your expertise. Okay? So sometimes that is the way it's defined. Ethos is also, to some extent, defined with goodwill, that you have a good intent towards your audience. Logos, it does not mean logic, everybody. The word logos in Greek actually means word. This is where Aristotle's talking about how to use language in the most persuasive way, believe it or not. And then finally, I think I did ethos and logos. Yeah, pathos is the last one that I'm going to do. And that is not just being emotional. It's appealing to the emotions of the audience, appealing to the things that we share, appealing to not just, oh, pity me, but all the other emotions as well and how to utilize them. So that's a much more detailed answer than just listing ethos, pathos, and logos, right? So to get full credit, you would need to both list and define the term. That might also come up when I'm talking to you about inartificial proofs or inartistic proofs. I forget how your book talks about it. Inartistic and artistic versus artificial and inartificial are sort of interchangeable, so don't worry too much about that. They mean the same things. I might also ask you to tell me whether or not Plato liked rhetoric or whether or not Aristotle liked rhetoric. I might ask the definition of rhetoric. These would be all short answers. I might ask you what the power relationship is, or what the relationship is between power and rhetoric during the Roman period. And that's where you can just give that one sentence of, the more decentralized a government, the greater the need for rhetoric. The more centralized a government, the less need there is for rhetoric. And hopefully my lecture on that explained that to you in more detail. So those are some of the short answers that you might find. You'll notice that most of them are from my lecture as well as the book. I tend to lean that way. If there's something that I pull out from the book, it's going to be likely that you know it already, such as what are the 5 canons, which I believe I talk about in my lecture. But also, what are the 3 types of narratives, for example? If that's in your text, which I have to double check, but if that's in this edition of the text, I may put that on there, even though we haven't really talked about it that much. But I won't put too many of those on there. I'm not up for tricking you, and you should always be able to find, sort of the answer to the question. What does multiple choice look like? I happen to think that multiple choice is the worst type of questioning that anyone can put on an exam. I don't think it tells us anything but about your intelligence or about your knowledge even. But what it does tell us is that you're able to find the correct answer and that you're able to make those detailed distinguishing sort of ideas between them. For example, if I said, how do I want to do? Cicero lived during the time of the Roman what? And your choices are Empire, era, republic, or democracy. Which one of those would you pick? Well, was it a democracy? Yeah, it's a type of democracy, to be honest with you. Was it during the Roman era? Yeah, it was during the Roman era, but so was Quintilian. And so what would be the correct answer? And the answer is obviously the Roman Republic, because we know he lived during a democracy, not the empire, right? So that's sort of, some people might say, hey, that's a trick question. Those other 3 or those other 2 answers could be right. And you're right, it could be, but it's not, okay? So think about these in terms of the course. Think about all of the questions and answers in terms of what we have studied, and that will get you the 100% that you want on this exam, okay? So how many questions are going to be on this exam? That is a tough call. Sometimes I have anywhere from 12 to 20. It just depends on how big the question is. For example, if I ask the question, explain the difference between the Roman Empire and the Roman Republic in terms of power and rhetoric, that's going to be worth probably 20 points because it's going to take a little while for you to answer that. I don't mean like an essay, but it takes a little more detail, whereas multiple choice questions are generally worth 5 or 10 points at most, okay? So it will depend on how many of the points I have for each question. If you're wondering how much of an answer do I have to give this question, here's a way to think about it. If it's a simple question like define something for me, I usually make that worth 5 points. If I say define and list and define, then I probably take each of those things and double them. So for the ethos, pathos, and logos question, I'm going to say, okay, you could get a point for ethos, pathos, logos, and then you also get a point for each definition. So if you only put down ethos, pathos, and logos, you're only going to get 3 points. It's not worth it, and sometimes I make those definitions worth 2 points. So you're really missing out if you don't read the full question and you don't answer it completely. So this is sort of my idea of how an exam works. I will post it. You will have 7 days to complete it. I do not do extensions. Let me be clear. I do not do extensions. Okay? Now, on your syllabus, it says, because you have a week to do it, that's why. I'm thinking in my head, like, what question would I have if I were a student? I'm like, well, why can't I get an extension on this? We did an extension on the paper. The answer to that is very simple. I give you a week to do it, okay? So that should be plenty of time. You shouldn't have to take a lot of time out of your life to take this exam. And speaking of that, I said we would do it during the week of the July 3rd through July 7th. And that is actually true, but we're not going to start it. I'm not going to make it available to you until July 5th, okay? The reason for that is that you probably want to go ahead and enjoy your 4th of July, and I don't want to put a test up today and have it be due a week from now, and in the middle of that is 4th of July. That's just too much to ask. So it will open on the 5th, be made available on the 5th. And it will remain open until July 12th. So you have to take it sometime in those 7 days. Again, it shouldn't take you that long. Maybe an hour, maybe not. If you're a little slower like me, it might take you a little longer than an hour. It just depends on how quickly you have those answers ready for you, which is where the studying comes in. What kind of studying should you do? Should you do any at all? And the answer is yes. Get the main concepts and ideas, such as ethos, pathos, logos, such as inartificial and artificial proofs, such as forensic, deliberative, and epideictic, such as Plato's theory on rhetoric, such as the difference between Cicero and Quintilian, such as a comparison between Plato, Aristotle, Isocrates. Who are the sophists? Those are the big things, right? Whatever I talked about in lecture, plus what was in the book, is going to be the things that are going to be on that exam. So simply sit down and write out your notes in an organized way so that when you get to a question that's about those things, which you know there's going to be, you can just flip to that page on your notes and you're able to answer the question. If it's something that's quote unquote off the beaten path, so to speak, meaning that it's not something that you picked up on as a major thing, or I did that thing where I picked out the narratives because I wanted to sort of throw a curveball, so to speak, you'll have the time and the energy and honestly the ability to look that up quickly and easily. Generally speaking, I don't ask questions unless they're in your text or unless they're easy to answer and you know it's coming from my lectures. I don't usually like throw a little detail into the lecture and say, remember this. That's just a stupid way to study or to test people. So again, I am only looking for you to be able to have the ability to find and explain the answers. That is all I want on this exam. All right, it will cover from actually Gorgias. I totally forgot Gorgias. It will actually cover Gorgias, Isocrates, Plato, Aristotle, the school of the sophists, so to speak, and the classical Romans, specifically Cicero and Quintilian. All right, I hope that helps you out. Let me know if it doesn't. The best thing to do when I'm on vacation is to text me, but if you just want to email, I will be checking those at a minimum of every other day, and then of course Blackboard as well. All right, everybody, I will be talking to you very soon, and enjoy your holiday, and also hopefully this test and the paper are at least a little bit interesting to you. I know that the second half of the course is much, much more interesting than the first. So hang in there, we're almost there. Okay, call with questions. Bye-bye.